It's an unusual and technologically advanced approach in conservation. Scientists in South Africa say they've tried a number of methods to make rhinoceros horns undesirable to poachers, but that none of them work. These animals are still killed illegally for the appendage. Some cultures believe it plays a role in medicine, and horns can sell for thousands of dollars per pound on the black market of wildlife trade. Now, though, researchers say they have a deterrent that can help limit that trade and make people want to avoid these horns like the plague. Scientists are making them radioactive. First, they tranquilize the rhinos. Then they implant tiny radioactive chips into the horn. After that, the animals go free. If they're poached for their horns, the parts will set off airport security systems that check for radioactivity, so illegal traffickers can more easily be caught. In addition to that, the radiation will poison people who consume the horns, and reduced demand could reduce the poaching. The experts taking part in the project say the amount of radioactivity is not high enough to hurt the rhinos themselves, nor the people who care for them. But it's a relatively new project, so time will tell if all goes according to plan. Hello to the best audience ever. I'm Carl Azuz. Welcome to the world from A to Z. In the United States, the clock is ticking for TikTok. Its parent company, ByteDance, is based in China, and it now has less than 2 months to either sell TikTok's American operations to an American company or to have it blocked from American users. TikTok says it has more than 170 million of those, over half the U.S. population. But earlier this year, President Joe Biden signed legislation that would ban the app because U.S. officials say Chinese law allows China's communist government to collect personal information about TikTok's American users and also possibly use the app to spread Chinese propaganda. TikTok has denied allowing this, and it says the U.S. law is unconstitutional because it singles out this app without punishing others. It also argues the law violates Fifth Amendment protections against private property being taken without compensation. But a U.S. appeals court recently ruled the law is constitutional, in part because it's specifically tailored to protect national security. On Monday, TikTok asked the court to allow the app to keep functioning until the Supreme Court has had a chance to review its appeal. It's not clear if the High Court will take up the case, and if nothing changes by January 19th, TikTok will be banned in America.
Scientists have created a microscopic hand from DNA that is incredibly small but could have incredibly big implications. The research team at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign used pieces of folded DNA to craft the microscopic hand, dubbed the NanoGripper, and used it to grab COVID-19 particles. A resulting published study demonstrated that the NanoGripper was not only able to conduct a rapid test to identify the COVID-19 virus, but its gripping mechanisms even blocked the virus's spike proteins from infecting the healthy cells. With a lot more research, the team says this helping hand could have potential beyond COVID, saying the NanoGripper could potentially be used to detect and grab other viruses, including HIV, influenza, and maybe even cancer.
On this date in world history. The Treaty of Paris was signed on this date in 1898, not to be confused with the Treaty of Paris of 1783 or the Treaty of Versailles in 1919. The one signed in 1898 formally ended the Spanish-American War. It had global consequences. Guam and Puerto Rico became part of the United States. Cuba temporarily became a U.S. protectorate, and the U.S. paid Spain $20 million for the Philippines, which became independent in 1946. This was the date in 1901 when the first Nobel Prizes were awarded, 5 years after the death of their founder, Alfred Nobel. His will set aside most of his fortune for the awards, which came as a surprise to his family. Some historians believe that Nobel created the prizes so as not to be remembered mainly for inventing dynamite and other explosives. And it was on this date in 1964 that U.S. civil rights leader Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. accepted the Nobel Prize for Peace. In his acceptance speech, Dr. King said the award was a profound recognition that nonviolence is the answer to the crucial political and moral questions of our time.
Word of knowledge. According to Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, what is the king of instruments? Piano, harpsichord, organ, bagpipes. large and loud, especially when you pull out all the stops. The instrument that Mozart crowned king was the organ.
Pulling out all the stops, we have the majestic organ to thank for this expression. Here's a pipe organ. Each pipe sounds one note, and each rank is controlled by a stop knob that controls airflow. Pushing it in blocks the sound, and pulling it out allows air to pass through. So if the organist pulls out multiple stops, they can press one key and hear multiple notes. That's how organists can build such rich chords, meaning sets of notes. Now maybe you saw this coming. If we pull out all the stops, we hear all the notes stacked on top of each other. It's loud, and it's a lot, and perfectly describes going all out. If any composer wrote music that pulled out all the stops, it was Johann Sebastian Bach. Not only was Bach a master composer, he was a master organ repairman. He traveled all over Germany, testing out the grand instruments. As one of his biographers wrote,
"The first thing he did in trying out an organ was to draw out all the stops and to play with the full organ. He used to say in jest that he must first of all know whether the instrument had good lungs."
Pipe organs date back as far as the 3rd century BC. The first model was a water organ, developed by the ancient Greeks. The water generated power that ran the instrument. And it was the ancient Egyptians who first used bellows to power the organ with wind. While the organist played, an organ blower kept air flowing to the instrument. Modern organs have electric motors to power them. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart called it the king of instruments, and with a sound like this, you can see why.
Spartans, Knights, and Senators. We'll start in the Badger State. That's Wisconsin. The village of Rosendale is the home of the Spartans at Rosendale Brandon Middle School. Hello to Mr. Herring's class. To the Peach State, Mrs. Chesser's class is watching from Evans Middle School. It's where you'll find the Knights in Evans, Georgia. And from the capital of the first state of Delaware, we welcome the Senators. Mr. Shikoski or Shikoski's class is watching from Dover High School in Dover.
Check out this heartwarming homecoming hug years in the making. Retired military dog Dasty joyfully reunited with former handler U.S. Army Sergeant Mike Fletcher. The pair partnered up while in service from 2018 until 2022, including a deployment to Afghanistan where they were tasked with explosives detection and patrol. Dasty not only did his job, he also became an unofficial mascot on base. When Mike left the Army in 2022 and moved to Wisconsin, he was separated from Dasty until this year when the 10-year-old Dutch Shepherd retired due to old age. That's when American Humane stepped in, helping reconnect the old pals, bringing them back together. Mike and his family have now adopted Dasty and plan to give him a comfortable retirement. Mike says having his best friend by his side will help his ongoing transition to civilian life.
Where in the world? This is a nation widely associated with Western Europe, though it has overseas departments from the Caribbean to the Indian Ocean. Its official language is widely spoken in Belgium, which shares this nation's northern border. This is France, whose capital and largest city is Paris.
A winter sport you might not be familiar with just held its first championship round of the season at the highest ski resort in Europe. That's located in France. And if the 4 people at a time race known as ice cross looks pretty fast from up here, get a glimpse of how it looks on the track. The winding ice trail is close to 1,100 feet in length. It has slopes, jumps, and drops. It takes athletes about 40 seconds to finish a run, and some say the resort's altitude at more than 7,500 feet above sea level makes the sport even more grueling. It's cool as ice for those who ice out the others while ice crossing the finish line, but the last ones to do that may wish their blades of steel had carved out an edge to help them boot the other racers instead of getting snowed in and slipping from the podium in a layer of ice crust. At least there are no ice queens or kings who don't pick on them for not being in a cutting-edge skate of mine. Some of you teachers might get that reference. I'm Carl Azuz, racing through another edition of The World from A to Z.